Welcome to a show where you will hear about how our liberty is being eroded by the very people that swear an oath to protect it.
Today, the president signed a big new anti-terrorism bill that would expand the government's ability to track down terrorists, but at some cost.
On this show, we will discuss many of the lies that the government that hates us, by the way, we will discuss the lies that the people in positions of power and influence spread every day.
And what is the best way to confuse children? Confuse them about their sexuality, confuse them about their gender, expose them to things that their little brains are not ready for yet. That is how they are confusing children. It is leading to chaos, and Big Daddy government, of course, can be there to pick us all up and take care of us at the end of it.
We will also talk about how current elected leadership at all levels of government has been corrupted by power and control, as well as discuss the types of leadership needed to correct our republic's course.
We the people. Well, it's time to remember that we the people are the government.
Providing assistance for the Ukrainians to defeat the Russians, that's the number one priority for the United States right now.
I am your host, Larry Linton, retired U.S. Navy Command Master Chief and prior Tennessee House of Representatives District 12 candidate, and welcome to the Liberty, Leadership, and Lies podcast. Welcome to this week's show, ladies and gentlemen. It was a very busy and productive week here in the Linton House. Tuesday was a great day, but only personally, not for the Republic. I spent some time that morning at breakfast with the men's ministry from my church. Then Denise and I celebrated Harlow's birthday by taking her out to get an ice cream pup cup at Dairy Queen. On the way home, we took the old Tahoe through an automatic car wash. Harlow did not enjoy that one bit, so that will be the first and last time we do that with her in the car. The rest of this week has been physically exhausting as well. There's a lot of work in the yard. I mean, a lot of work. Spreading new soil by hand, shovel by shovel, trying to level out the yard so it doesn't feel like we're going through moguls on a cross-country dirt track while mowing on the riding lawnmower. I also finished up the garage shelving project at my daughter and son-in-law's house. Last Saturday, I spent the afternoon helping my son-in-law's mother load up her U-Haul for her move back to New Hampshire. She lived in a third-floor apartment here in Sevierville. A few guys from the men's ministry and myself definitely got our flight of stairs climbed for the month on that day. Combine that with the record heat and humidity here in East Tennessee, I felt like I sweated gallons of sweat this whole week. On a national level, the events of Monday and Tuesday this past week, we'll address those a little bit later in the show. First, though, I'm going to discuss how the heat and humidity of the past few weeks ties into this week's topic on lies, and how the government and their allies use these lies to enslave the citizens. Before I talk about how the communists are determined to completely destroy the Republic, I'm going to discuss one of the many illustrations I have queued up for this episode before we discuss Devin Archer's testimony and the subsequent distraction from the Biden crime family's activities with the third indictment of President Trump. Those two items are also related to this week's lies. But let's start off with a big lie lately that comes to us from the queen of deceit herself, Hillary Clinton. And it is related to the climate change hysteria and the lies and how it relates to the diminishing of our national power. On the 25th of July, she retweeted, or whatever it's called now that Twitter's changed its name to X, but she retweeted an item from an account titled @CAPAction. Now, that account's headline reads as follows, quote, "Holding our leaders accountable and fighting alongside @AMPROG to improve the lives of all Americans through bold, progressive policies," unquote. Communist alert word in that headline are progressive policies. The word progressive is very deceitful in nature and is commonly used by the communists because most Americans understand the word progress to mean making things better. As a noun, the word is defined as 1, a movement toward a goal or to a further or higher stage, or 2, developmental activity in science, technology, etc., especially with reference to the commercial opportunities created thereby or to the promotion of the material well-being of the public through the goods, techniques, or facilities created. When the commies use that word, most people relate it to the second definition that I just read. However, what they really mean is from the first definition I read, a movement toward a goal. And just what is the commies' goal? Well, it's complete totalitarian rule and the eroding of our liberty. We'll discussing how that is planned to be implemented here in the United States a bit later based upon the commies' own written words. But first, back to Hillary and her quote tweet last week. CAP Action tweeted a graphic of headlines about the hot weather. Some headlines that even stated the Earth just had its hottest weather in more than 100,000 years. Of course, some sheeple will believe that lie. But I want to see the actual recorded temperatures from that time frame before I lend any sort of credence to their idiocy. Old Hillbags retweeted that with this statement, quote, hot enough for you? Thank a MAGA Republican, or better yet, vote them out of office, unquote. I'm not sure in what reality that even makes sense. Is it the MAGA Republicans' fault for the hot temperatures because they voted against Biden's Green New Deal legislation? You remember that bill, don't you? The one that actually passed the Congress and was signed into law? These MAGA Republicans' mere opposition to pass legislation is to blame for the warm weather? Oh, before I forget, that term, MAGA Republicans. I guess they've learned a bit from their previous mistakes of calling us a basket of deplorables, haven't they? But this is weird, I think. Just how is Make America Great Again Republicans supposed to be a pejorative? It's almost like a badge of honor, in my opinion. Every citizen of this republic should be heavily invested in making America great, don't you think? Because the opposite of making America great is making America terrible. Here are just a few antonyms or opposites for the word great. Detestable, inferior, insignificant, unpleasant, ordinary, poor. I always say that we should believe the communists when they are speaking. If they are against making America great again, that means they are all in on making America every one of those antonyms of great that I just read. Or, in the words of their dear leader Barack Hussein Obama, quote, fundamentally transforming, unquote, America from what it was into their terrible, dystopian, tyrannical nanny state. Believe them when they speak, ladies and gentlemen. They always reveal themselves, no matter how the legacy mainstream media twists or attempts to redefine their words and actions. It's almost like saying the child sniffer didn't remember he was directly involved in Hunter's business dealings because it happened at a time his other son was dying of brain cancer. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, they are actually trying to sell that idea to an American public that is actually waking up to the criminality, degeneracy, and treasonous activities of the Biden clan. Besides all of the news about Trump, Hunter, and Joe and all that, there's a bit of breaking news that hasn't been discussed widely this past week. That is the news that there are recordings of Ashley Biden, Joe Biden's daughter, confirming that the diary Project Veritas was in possession of is really hers. This means there is documented victim statements of sexual abuse of a child by Joe Biden. So, besides the treasonous activity of Joe while serving as the vice president, there is an actual contemporary victim statement of sex abuse by Joe that is more credible than the statements about Trump made by that weirdo E. Jean Carroll. I'll save that for another day, though. Let's get back to the Hildebeest's tweet. So anyway, let me get this straight. The ideological and evidence-based opposition to government's claims that paying more taxes and destroying America's energy independence, that's caused the earth to heat up, the opposition. The hubris of these communists is amazing. They have convinced large numbers of people that if we pay more in taxes and more for the price of quote-unquote environmentally friendly goods, we can lower the temperature of the earth. This is coming from the same government that taxes our income, the same income that we then use to purchase vehicles that we also pay taxes on, and fill up with gasoline that we pay taxes on, and maintain that vehicle with oil changes, tires, and shock absorbers that we also pay taxes on, all to drive on roads that are filled with potholes that the government is supposed to fix with all of the taxes they collect from us. All of these taxes, and remember, taxes that we are coerced into paying, these taxes the government takes from us, and they ultimately do not fulfill their promises. These elitists, remember, they're just plain communists, are now promising us that they can lower the temperature of the planet if we just pay more taxes, do our part. Oh, and eat bugs. We cannot forget that they want us to eat bugs as well as to not own anything and be happy. Please, somebody tell me which climate change prediction over the last 100 plus years has actually come true. And while you're researching that, please find out just how much tax revenue has already been collected by the government to combat those doom and gloom predictions, along with the associated increases in the cost of living based upon government intervention in the free market to combat climate change. Amazing the web of lies that surround climate hysteria, isn't it? All in the name of progress, right? Progressive policies. Well, yes, as a matter of fact, it is the movement towards a goal. The goal of totalitarian rule by removing our freedoms and enslaving us all to fuel their tyranny with our sweat equity. So anytime you hear one of the communist climate change alarmists screaming that we need to achieve more progress, that is exactly what they are referring to. Their goal of domination and our subjugation, our enslavement. It reminds me of this. I saw a friend share something on social media the other day, and it points to a few things. The first of which is, again, we have to believe these evil people when they speak. We have seen how true that is as it relates to children today, but the chance that the alphabet mafia parades or videos on YouTube about coming after the children is not new. The communists have openly stated their intentions in the public arena for decades now. And because of the apathy of most of the electorate and those people who just want to be left alone, there has not been enough attention paid to their statements before, which is why our republic has reached this tipping point in history. The item my friend shared were the communist goals that were entered into the congressional record more than 60 years ago. There were 45 of these openly stated goals then, and some of them have already been accomplished, like granting recognition of Red China and admitting Red China to the United Nations. In some of these items, though, they have been overcome by events like the implosion of the old Soviet Union. But let's examine just a couple of them and see how successful these evil people are. Now, I won't list all 45 of them on this week's show, but I will share them on the webpage and on my social media pages. You must examine them for yourself. And then ask yourself if just sitting on the sidelines hoping to be left alone is a good plan. Number 6 on the list of 45 is this: provide American aid to all nations regardless of communist domination. That's just more of that foreign aid stuff, ladies and gentlemen, which is really money laundering. But it does more than just allow the usurpers in elected office to purchase influence with other countries. Look no further than the Biden crime family's dealings in the Ukraine with the $1 billion aid package that Dementia Joe has bragged about on several occasions. But this foreign aid to communist countries accomplishes 3 things. First, it elevates countries that dislike the United States. It elevates or increases one of their instruments of national power. We've talked about the 4 instruments of national power on this program before. The four of them that are captured with the acronym DIME, D-I-M-E. DIME stands for D, diplomatic. That is accomplished through embassies and ambassadors, recognition programs, negotiations, treaties, policies, and international forums. The I is informational. The items that fall into this category include military information, public diplomacy, public affairs, communications resources, international forums, spokespersons, timing, media, and venues for announcements. M is the military part of national power. This includes military operations, engagement, security cooperation, deterrence, shows of force, our military technology, and as well as the size and composition of the armed forces. And finally, E. E stands for economic. This is where foreign aid, the money laundering, this is where that falls into. As well as trade policies, fiscal and monetary policies, embargoes and tariffs and other such things. Like I said, providing foreign aid to communist countries that do not like us very much accomplishes three things. First, it elevates that country's economic instrument of national power. In doing so, it weakens our nation's economic instrument of national power. But Larry will say, we're the richest country on the planet. That can't hurt us. Really? China, a country that I would argue is our greatest adversary right now, has a national debt roughly 1/3 of our nation's. So, who has more leeway or flexibility in their spending ability? Our foreign aid, coupled with vast amounts of government spending here at home, has significantly weakened our economic position. It has weakened our economic instrument of national power. Just look at the downgrade in our credit rating. And it also strengthens the other countries. Bad for us, good for our enemies. Which is point 2. Providing this aid to countries that don't like us very much is starting to tip the scales. There has been a sunset of our national power and influence on the global stage. No doubt some of that is due to the incompetence of the current occupant of the Oval Office, but because other countries sense how weak our national debt has made us, they are forming alliances to further weaken the U.S. dollar on a global scale. There is an economic alliance out there right now, mostly comprised of countries that don't like the United States very much, determined to remove the U.S. dollar as the global reserve currency. It goes by the acronym of BRICS, B-R-I-C-S. That stands for the countries in this alliance. B, it's for Brazil. We know the type of government that is in place there right now, don't we? A mirror of our 2020 election happened there, and a full-blown communist is now the leader of Brazil. R is for Russia, and we all know how Russia feels about the United States at this point in time. I is for India, fast becoming a world power and a major player on the global stage. C, of course, is for China, our biggest adversary right now, economically, ideologically, and militarily. Of course, they own our resident-in-chief as well, with all the compromising information they have on him. And S is for South Africa. That country is slipping closer and closer to a radical tyranny every day, where white farmers are being murdered on a grand scale. So, look up the activities of this economic alliance and tell me that they are not a danger to our economic instrument of national power. Third, and finally, our government is increasing our national debt daily. They are putting the citizens of this great nation into perpetual debt bondage, enslaving us all. And that was just item number 6 of the 45. Now, let's see which items on this list relate to the events that took place this past Monday and Tuesday. As most of you are aware, Devon Archer, Hunter Biden's best friend and business partner, a person who Hunter said was family, that Devon was for all intents and purposes a Biden, well, he testified in front of Congress. which almost didn't happen because the usurper's Department of Justice wanted him in jail to prevent the testimony. In that testimony, it was confirmed that Joe Biden was heavily involved in Hunter's business dealings. So much so that Joe Biden was quote-unquote the brand that got many of these large money deals accomplished. The shady dealings with Burisma were confirmed. There were also bribes by the widow of the former mayor of Moscow. Let's also not forget that Hunter admitted to not paying taxes on money he received from China after the big guy, Joe, said on national TV during a debate that Hunter never received any money from China. The commies in government and in the media have been trying to sell the public that Joe was only talking about weather or some other such nonsense on these phone calls. I mean, that testimony was explosive. It was damning. And the lengths the media went to on Monday evening and into Tuesday morning trying to explain it all away was hilarious. Hilarious and disgusting. But the events of this past Monday and Tuesday also align with a couple of these items from the 45 stated goals of communists. The first one is number 15. Capture one or both of the political parties in the United States. We know for sure that the Democrat Party has been completely captured by the communists. Look at how they're dealing with the Kennedy family, the longtime Democrat stalwarts. They are trying to destroy Robert F. Kennedy Jr. We also know that portions of the Republican Party have been compromised as well. Now, item number 20 on this list is this: infiltrate the press. Get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, policy-making positions. The way the legacy news media is contorting themselves in defense of the Biden crime family, along with the breathless, continuous report as fact that Donald Trump colluded with Russia to win the 2016 election, is proof positive that they are full-blown Pravda for the communists here in the United States of America. And that goes along with item number 21 on the list. That is to gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. They have not been successful in the talk radio spectrum, but in television and movies, they have been quite successful. Snow White is now Hispanic. The Seven Dwarfs aren't really dwarves. Hollywood and the media are pushing conspiracy theories to downplay the movie Sound of Freedom and how it shows the reality of global child sex trafficking. Item number 33, well, it's on full display this week. That item discusses the need to eliminate all laws or procedures which interfere with the operation of the communist apparatus. Just who is the head of the communist apparatus in our republic right now? A good argument can be made that it is Barack Obama, and that's an argument that I can agree with. But at this point in time, the face of the communist apparatus is also the head of the Biden crime family. Biden and his inappropriately named Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation have criminalized politics in their mad pursuit of the man that is standing in their way, Donald Trump. And they are doing it in a way to try and hide their criminality. How so, you may ask? Well, let's go over a timeline of events for the past couple of months, shall we? On the 7th of June, the FBI, quite unwillingly I might add, released documents to a congressional committee investigating Biden corruption and criminality that alleges Hunter and Joe each received a $5 million bribe from Burisma. In order to distract the public and get that news out of the headline, what happens? Well, Joe Biden's Department of Justice indicts former President Trump in the Mar-a-Lago documents case the very next day, June 8th. And that's just a continuation of the dramatic abuse of power against the communist political enemies that began with the unprecedented raid of the former president's home. Then on July 26th, Hunter Biden's sweetheart plea agreement falls apart in court, with revelations about future immunity from prosecution as it relates to violations of the Foreign Agent Registry Act. The DOJ, working with Hunter's lawyers, tried to sneak that in the agreement without any transparency. When the judge in the case started asking questions, neither party could agree on the provisions, and the judge smartly rejected the plea agreement. But the country became aware of the shenanigans that the government and the defendant's lawyers were working behind the scenes to create, and another distraction was needed. What happened on the 27th of July, the very next day? Well, the special prosecutor going after Trump, Jack Smith, who was passed over for a Justice Department promotion under the Trump administration, well, he comes out with a superseding indictment in the Mar-a-Lago case, adding more charges against President Trump, all the while leaking misinformation or malinformation and lies to the press about the case. You see, misinformation, or like I say, malinformation, is only bad for the communists when it truthfully exposes their wrongdoings. Misinformation as it relates to anything to do with Get Trump is perfectly fine for the communists. So what happens next at the beginning of this week? On Monday, the 31st of July, Devin Archer, the Biden family member in Hunter's words, testified in front of Congress. In that testimony, it was confirmed that Joe Biden is the brand they were selling, and Joe himself participated in more than 20 conference calls with Hunter's business partners. His testimony completely destroys Joe's and the rest of the commies' narratives that they have been peddling since 2016. Not only did Joe discuss his son's business dealings, Joe himself was the business. He was the brand Hunter, Devin, and many others, including Joe's brother James or Jim Biden. Joe was the business they were all selling all over the planet. That makes Joe Biden a foreign agent. It also means Joe Biden committed treason and sold out his country to enrich himself. A hat tip goes out to Dan Bongino for this tweet earlier this week that destroys the commies' narrative. Quote, "The Democrats are correct. Outside of the bank records, the suspicious activity reports, the wire transfers, the Privat bank transactions, the LLCs, the texts, the emails, the WhatsApp messages, the photos of Joe with Hunter's business partners, the voicemails to his son, the two business partners saying Joe is the brand, the big guy, and the chairman, the two whistleblowers' testimony, the recorded phone calls between Biden and former Ukrainian President Poroshenko, the video of Joe bragging about firing the Ukrainian prosecutor, and Hunter's statements that he's giving his dad half his income, there is no evidence of Joe Biden being involved." Unquote. That, ladies and gentlemen, that's a lot of evidence. All of it essentially confirmed by Devin Archer's testimony. So, what happens on the 1st of August, the very next day? A big distraction is now needed, bigger than the documents case, too. Here comes the useful idiot with a grudge against Trump again, Jack Smith. He indicts President Trump for January 6th. You know, we're going to cover that indictment next week a bit more in depth and how it is the height of hypocrisy. But the entire timeline I just went over, it demonstrates the implementation of item number 33 on the 45-item list for how the communists want to control America. Believe these evil people when they say something. You know, we'll also go over some more of those items in next week's episode in addition to the corrupt indictment. But for this week, I'm sorry, folks, time has run out and that's it. In closing, we have this week's wisdom from God's Word. And today it comes to us from Proverbs 20:17. "Bread of falsehood is sweet to a man, but afterwards his mouth shall be filled with gravel." The lies our government, the government that hates us, the lies they spread every day in order to enslave us have been very sweet. Citizens of this great republic have been eating them up for decades now. The communists are very adept at making their lies sweet enough for the consumption by everyday Americans. These lies about Donald Trump are meant to further enslave the republic. The comparisons between multiple times indicted Trump and 0 indictments for Biden make swallowing their lies easier. It's like honey with castor oil. How many crimes were Stalin, Hitler, Mao, and Xi, and all the other dictators charged with while they were in power? Exactly 0. But every single one of their political enemies were not only criminally charged, but were also sent to the gulag or to the grave, which is exactly what they are trying to do with Donald Trump. Once again, thank you all for listening this week, and I pray that you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Until next week, stand in the arena with me. Reveille, it's time to wake up.